absolutely a strategy. It's something that we discuss, and Tyler's aware that I created a site specifically for supply chain news and maritime news, and this is something that we've dove into and discussed deeply.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is the stuff out of Sri Lanka, China, Bangladesh is getting out in the news. But I was reading an article the other day, and Mbwana is here. I don't see Messi, but a lot of the infrastructure projects that the Chinese are taking over in Africa are not even being reported outside of the continent. So it's not making news so much. I don't know if Mbwana wants to comment on that.
So we actually do report on it, and if you go to the site Freewave TV, you'll see that we have been reporting. China just started a new port in Africa. I can't remember where off the top of my head, but yeah, they're heavily extensively building ports in Africa to control the goods in and out of that country.
Yeah, and yesterday, some news out of India. The Indian Enforcement Directorate, which is sort of like the combination of the income tax department, the companies, regulators, etc., they raided 24 Chinese companies' operations in India to look for both tax evasion, fraud, and misreporting. So a lot of the Chinese companies operating in India are being officially raided and investigated. So it's going to get interesting.
Okay, thank you for that. Um, let's see. We have to do the air horn and then go into the tech news. We got the stream going, audio effects. There we go. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Happy Wednesday, July 6th. The biggest tech story of today comes from CoinDesk that a Toronto-based crypto lender, Voyager Digital, you guess the rest of the headline, files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in New York, estimating it has 100,000 or more creditors and $1 billion to $10 billion in assets. The Toronto-based lender files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in New York late Tuesday. It's the cryptopocalypse.
Tyler, am I the only person that loves these gifts
That loves what?
that loves these gifts on the PFPs now that you can
No, I
press
love
down
them
on your
too.
picture? I mean,
Yesterday, I
like, do
went.
you see my eyes, Tyler? Do you see my
Oh yeah, I
eyes?
see the eyes. Yeah. Oh, so that's
So
how
I
you
kind of
can
like that's how I
respond.
just say, like, really? Like, here goes the ride. Like, I mean, which one's next? Do we want to
Right.
take some bets? Are we going to start
Here,
gambling
here,
now?
here.
And
Well, funny you should ask because the next article is from
Oh, I do
CNN.
have some questions about this Voyager thing.
Okay.
Okay, so the USD coin token that they were offering was supposed to be, I think, insured somehow by FDIC. Are they going to pay all the money back because it was insured, or all of that money is gone?
I'm
I don't
sorry,
know.
what was the question? I didn't understand the question.
I think that USD coin that Voyager was offering was supposed to be insured by FDIC. Are they going to return that money back to the investors because it was insured, or all this money is gone because now they have filed for
Was the
bankruptcy?
platform insured, or was it just the coin that was insured? Because I think it depends on the platform where you invested it, not necessarily the coin. I think
Yeah,
Ken.
you have to be a bank that's paying premiums into the FDIC to be insured by the FDIC. If they're not a regulated bank paying
U.S.
premiums,
dollars in a bank.
then I don't know how they have the FDIC insurance.
Yeah, so it's definitely the platform that you've invested in. Like if it's through Chase or Citi or like not Coinbase.
Can we hear her well?
I couldn't hear her.
Annette, you want to try again?
Annette, you were a little bit in the matrix.
Sorry, I have
No, sorry, Annette, we can't hear you. Maybe you have to jump on in again.
So
before they
here,
send it.
so there's a statement. I'm not paying that close attention to Voyager, but so I just looked something up. So let me see if I could. So
Signal,
someone's in the
but
matrix.
it's through the platform. It's wherever you put the money.
Right, right. But so what they may have done is taken U.S. dollars that they had and put it in an FDIC bank account. So that's fine. It's in an FDIC bank account. Nonetheless, it's still part of Voyager. It's an asset of Voyager, and it's probably going to be part of the bankruptcy proceeding. Okay, unless it's somehow considered a segregated account. You know, where they separated. Segregated customer accounts. That's a whole different issue about segregating customer accounts because it's not the whole thing's non-regulated. You know, I mean, the answer is I don't know, but you have all these issues because it's non-regulated. Yeah, it's the same thing with Robinhood, by the way. Robinhood had to issue a statement that all of the assets, whether they're technically U.S. dollars or not, might become an asset, an unsecured asset for creditors, you know, for all creditors. So it depends.
So a friend of mine who's a OG crypto dude sent out a tweet today, uh, which is a screenshot from an article, which seems to be a really nice summary of what's been going on lately. And I'm just going to read it really briefly. It's just two long sentences. It says, to quickly recap, 3AC, which is a shortened an acronym for Three Arrows Capital, blew up because they took boring, stable, and predictable arbitrage strategies, strapped on an egregious amount of leverage, and succumbed to the market after the Terra USD carry trade meltdown. So again, the first situation was the Luna cratering. That is what drug Three Arrows Capital to crater. And that has led to now BlockFi, Voyager, Celsius, Babel, and others to come to crater because due to the perceived investment acumen in large pools of assets, Three Arrows Capital was allowed to borrow with little to no collateral by lending companies eager to redeploy retail deposits into high-yielding crypto credit instruments. These lenders, such as BlockFi, Babel, Voyager, and Celsius, eschewed prudent risk management policies in order to get as many loans out the door as quickly as possible. As a result, when 3AC failed to meet their margin calls, these lenders were left holes the size of the Marianas Trench in their balance sheets. Unfortunately, these once celebrated billion-dollar plus valued fintech startups are now headed towards insolvency first and the glue factory later. So it's a bit of a snowball due to Luna cratering, which led to 3AC cratering, which led to their lenders cratering, BlockFi, and today Voyager, just recently Celsius and Babel, and there will be others. So whoever went big into loaning to 3AC will largely find themselves with a massive hole in their balance sheet, as the article says. So that's the long story short. So the second,
And let me point out in previous financial crises, you had FDIC institutions that were generally FDIC institutions selling stuff to retail investors that were not FDIC insured. That was Charles Keating in the Arizona SNL debacle back in the 80s. So yeah, so his basic bank accounts were backed by what was called FISLIC, was a FDIC equivalent, but they were also selling like high yield bonds right out of the same bank that were not FDIC insured, and people got burnt. Okay, and that's why if you go to even a bank today, and because banks are now allowed to sell mutual funds, if you go buy a stock mutual fund from a bank, it's going to say right on it, it's not FDIC insured. It's no different than buying a mutual fund from like a pure. I mean, there's not even a pure stock company, but because everything's a bank now. But there used to be a separation between banks and brokerage firms. But they'll tell you if you're buying a stock fund, it's not FDIC insured. So you have to actually know. It actually has to say on it that this account is or isn't. depending on what it is. I would not believe that most of these things are truly FDIC insured. They may have taken some money from people and put that money in some FDIC insured bank account, but it's probably still an asset belonging to the entity, not to the individual that gave them the money, and therefore it's going to be available for all creditors. So that's going to be my guess.
Yeah, and to piggyback on what Ken was just saying, I actually spent 10 years as a licensed financial advisor, worked in the bank environment at JP Morgan Chase up into and resigned there 2 weeks before Lehman Brothers failed. So I was on the front line explaining these differences every day. I covered multiple branches as an expert in investment advice. And one thing going back to 2008, mostly 2008, 2009, is there's also SIPC, which would be what is the insurance on the money market, what is considered a money market fund, because those are regulated differently, that have different reserve requirements. That was what was about to break during the 2008 financial crisis. There was a bunch of commercial paper, and that Walmart had a bunch of money, and the I believe the Treasury stepped in like October of 2008 to make sure that the buck, quote unquote buck, which was the money market dollar, not even the FDIC dollar. So at a bank, if you have a brokerage account, in that account, what's in your money market fund may have some protection should it have an SIPC label on your statement. But FDIC is just for bank deposits, which would be CDs and checking accounts, what's called a DDA, a direct demand account, and savings accounts, which have, if you've ever had a round trip in and out of savings account too many times in a month and gotten a fee assessed by your bank, that's them penalizing you because there's a different reserve requirement in the back, VAR, value at risk, to the bank for all these different classes of their balance sheet. So I almost want to say that FDIC might have been on the component of the institution or the platform that was offering it when you cashed out and were between trades. They may have offered FDIC cash, US dollars. But I highly doubt that there's a coin that has any type of investment protection, because there would have to be tons of reserves that I'm not aware of.
Okay, thank you for that. So the next big topic is from Bloomberg. They say they have sources that the United States is lobbying the Netherlands to ban ASML from selling some of its older deep ultraviolet lithography systems for chip production to... Go ahead and finish the sentence.
China.
Yes. So we've known this story here at Tech News for a long time. This is barely a secret at all. We've discussed this multiple times, going back nearly a year. I don't know that it was ever formally acknowledged or leaked with sources to Bloomberg or anything like that, but this is just kind of obvious geopolitical fuckery that the types of which you learn to expect is going on if you follow follow tech news every day. This is just par for course. So yes, there's a company in the Netherlands called ASML, which is perhaps one of the most important companies on planet Earth in 2022. Why? Because they provide a critical piece of the chain to enable the making of the lithography systems that are necessary to do semiconductor factories, especially high-end semiconductor factories, which China desperately wants, and no one else can really figure out how to do. So you can want to build semiconductor factories, and you might have all the money in the world to do it, but if you don't have access to ASML's proprietary lithography systems, good luck. You're fucked. So the U.S. knows this. China knows this. The U.S. is telling the Netherlands, hey, you know that company you have, ASML? Let's make sure that they're not allowed to sell any of that stuff to the Chinese, please. Can we please, pretty please, make sure that doesn't happen? Um, yeah, we knew that was going on. We've known that was going on for a very long time. I don't know. I don't know that it was ever published, or and Bloomberg saying they have sources. They could have just came in here. We could have told them that. I mean, this is just kind of a well understood reality in the space. Anyway, but now Bloomberg's reporting it. There it is. The U.S. is pushing the Netherlands to ban ASML from selling to China mainstream technology essential to making a large chunk of the semiconductor. Yeah. Okay.
Hey, Tyler,
Yeah.
this is Robert. Hey, I just wonder, I would love to see this particular company's security and how they've kept
Right.
espionage out.
Right.
That
Amen,
would be a
Robert.
major case study.
Amen. Because that article did come up one time. That there was, I remember an article. I'm sure we can find it because it's a very simple Google query. It's like ASML China and espionage, and I'm sure we can find the article. And there was an article about 6 months ago that touched on that topic. And I'm trying to remember the essence of that article. It escapes me. But you're right. No doubt that is one of the highest targets for Chinese state-sponsored corporate espionage in the world, easily. Bar none. Easily, that's the number one target. So, yeah, it would be truly interesting to see how they deal with that. They must go to incredible lengths because China would spare no expense in employing not just cyber resources, but physical resources such as any Chinese national who or anyone who has any relatives in mainland China will be approached and essentially coerced into working as a corporate spy.
Just think, Tyler, how they would do their recruiting and retention, and how you would have to keep your personal
Yep,
information updated.
yep,
And I mean, it's a perfect example of you do need profiling when you have certain companies. I mean, it's just matter of fact, if you want to protect certain things. So
right.
interesting.
Well, I can say because I don't know. I imagine they had to screen anyone that could potentially be a spy. Would have to be let go and everything else. But I do know that Ericsson in Stockholm, who has been a partner of mine multiple times over the years, when I go to have meetings at their global headquarters, and where Huawei built their European headquarters precisely next door to Ericsson's headquarters, which is in a rather auspicious place. Like that's not a coincidence that Huawei chose to do that. And Ericsson is equally, well, I assume equally paranoid, and for a good reason, about Huawei doing corporate espionage on them. And they know it. I mean, they even tell you stories over lunch about some of the crazy things they've encountered. And they could go on for days on those crazy stories. But I imagine they as well have to be incredibly careful about recruitment and everything. So
there was a news reporting about corporate espionage happened in Japan by Chinese person, and he was filed for the international police thingy in Paris recently, so that they recruit anybody they can recruit. He was recruited according to the newspaper. He was recruited through his ex-employee's wife, who happened to have come to Japan to study Japanese. He just happened to be the corporate national person, so that anybody can be recruited, according to the newspaper mentioning in Japan lately.
So I just did the Google search I was referring to earlier, ASML China espionage, and it came up with 3 articles. One that just happened 3 months ago from Bloomberg. ASML warns Chinese rival may be infringing its trade secrets. The Dutch company has shared concerns with Chinese officials. ASML has warned that an affiliate of a China company it previously accused of stealing its trade secrets has begun marketing products that could infringe on its intellectual property rights. And then there was another one from CNBC that Chinese spies reportedly stole secrets from Dutch chip equipment maker ASML. And then another from Reuters. ASML says it suffered intellectual property theft. Dutch ASML said on Thursday it had been the victim of corporate espionage in 2015 involving employees from countries including China, but said it had not been the target of any national conspiracy. The ASML said the perpetrators took large files on memory sticks from its Silicon Valley software subsidiary that develops software for machine optimization. Wow, you have people literally right out of a Hollywood movie running into offices with thumb drives trying to steal files. Okay, so second biggest topic of the day. Oh no, third. From TechCrunch, Amazon partners with Just Eat to offer a free Grubhub subscription to its Amazon Prime members in the United States. And as part of that deal, Amazon will receive equity in Grubhub. Okay. Next, that's kind of distribution for equity play. So Grubhub or Just Eat wants more users. Well, Amazon's got a shit ton of users. Hey, Amazon, what would it take for us to tap into your tremendous, enormous user base of Amazon Prime members? Well, you just give us 10% of your company, and then we'll roll that out as an offering. That's kind of a classic biz dev deal there. The next is
It happened with Tile when Apple started doing the little trackers. Tile, to compete, had to expand and tap into the Amazon network, so that was quite the pairing there. Nice to see that it's happening again. It's hard to compete, especially with all the companies collapsing.
So the next one is NSIT selects 4 encryption algorithms designed to withstand future quantum computing hacking threats to be part of its post-quantum cryptographic standard. For years, the National Institute of Standards and Technology has been working on a project to identify and vet a handful of useful encryption algorithms designed to withstand future quantum computing hack threats. Yeah, we're all going to need that because quantum computers are arriving on our doorstep as we speak. So that delivery is in the mail. That technology is coming over the horizon without haste, and so we need to preemptively be ready for all that.
Yeah, just to say, Tyler, as I mentioned before, it's already here. I mean, there's algorithms like New Hope, other lattice cryptography. It's in Chrome right now. It's not used most of the time because it's a bit slower, not much. It already exists, provably post-quantum safe stuff. It's already been around. People just need to get off their bums and start using
it. Next up, the UK's CMA, the market authority, launches an antitrust investigation into Microsoft's Activision Blizzard acquisition, setting a September 1st deadline for its initial decision. That's not going to happen. There's nothing antitrust about Microsoft buying one of the big video game companies. That is such a huge, crazy, tremendous space. I don't know if Matt's able to comment because he's at Microsoft.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always going to be that antitrust. You know, whenever anything smells like tech, it's going to get some scrutiny. So, I mean, this has been why we don't talk about the potential use cases. Again, all public information about what this could potentially do to. I don't think it's on the gaming side. It's what are our plans for the App Store? Is it going to be reflective of a natural coexistence with the current app stores, or are we going to be a little bit more aggressive there? But I think, and I'm always here never representing Microsoft. I'm here representing the tech industry. Based on public information, Satya said that he's going to be very fair, as I use air quotes, in terms of current use cases, the 30% for Google Play, 30% for App Store. But then there's this area between that 30% and 47% for app development into the metaverse. And Meta has come out, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tyler, and team, that they would go up to 47 or 50%. So I think there's this, what are you going to do with app development and DevOps for new use cases? Where are you going to play? Are you going to dominate not by share of the gaming space? Are you going to dominate by basically stiff-arming some of the developers to come to you because it's so lucrative for you to come to Microsoft's development community versus the others? And I know that's stratified between, well, what do you mean? Music is different than developer code and insights and input, but I think that's the debate. If I'm reading between the lines, that's the debate. They're saying, hey, we're going to scrutinize this because we don't know what you're going to do. You got to tell us what you're going to do once this thing closes. And I think Satya will slow roll in a good way, in a fair, air quotes, in a fair way, how he intends to do that with Brad. Brad Smith is our president.
I thought the whole point was that the Xbox gaming service was the thing that was going to be most competitive, because for a few bucks a month, you have access to now a huge catalog, which is unlike all the other companies or developers. So I thought that was quite the competitive angle that Microsoft chose. And as long as they still release games like Call of Duty for PlayStation, there's no antitrust issue here. So it's just like, hey, look, come on over to Xbox. It's so much smoother here. It's all these games for so much less. So, you know, that's what happens when you're able to invest in a good catalog. You can offer it for cheaper on your platform than anyone else can offer it on theirs. Even if you let them take their royalties, you're selling it for $10 a month for hundreds of games. They just can't compete.
Well, and I think the other point, you hit it right on the nail on the head. The other thing is, well, we just got all those Google workloads. Well, of course you're going to get the workloads, right? Because those workloads for Activision Blizzard are sitting on a competitive platform. So the short-term tactical thing is we bring all those workloads from us. So that's going to make our other tech brethren and friends, I'll call it, that's going to make them very angry. And so you give it to the lawyers. They're going to make a case. We're going to scrutinize this thing. You give it to Washington, D.C., and as everybody knows, they don't really understand tech. They're probably the slowest to get it of all places, with rare exception. So I think they're trying to figure out what this means. They're just not technology enthusiasts. They don't understand what they're trying to legislate today.
Yeah, well, didn't the U.S. already decided that they're not going to do anything?
Yeah. So it's going to be up to the lawyers to make a case, to educate, Capitol Hill and Congress and all that other stuff. We saw the same thing with Facebook, and Zuck's response to, I think it was educating Senator Grassley on what Facebook is, right? And that bled into Section 230. So think about 230, content moderator publisher versus, are you going to be friendly in the App Store? What are your intentions with the developer community? Will there be a disproportionate bias for you to come to Microsoft versus other platforms? And then you break into the metaverse, which it's kind of a room divider. Like, it's real, and no, it's just a bunch of hype. And on any given day, depending on which way the wind blows, I can kind of see both sides. But I've been a believer that it's coming, and we'll see a lot of noise. But I think this is a two-step process. The first I mentioned, the second being, what the heck is a metaverse, and what are the things that we don't see yet that are going to be divisive or that are going to be, something that's DOJ worthy. So I think it's just going to be a long, typical process that's going to educate. There's going to be a lot of barbs thrown back and forth. Think about what happened between the HoloLens and Microsoft and Facebook. Think about that sort of a tech retention of talent and, who's going from HoloLens to Facebook. Just think of that on a broader scale in terms of the app community and the metaverse. That's my personal opinion. I welcome others.
Okay. I don't think the U.S. has really touched. I'm reading a comment. Still not convinced they're a good argument from the Okay.
I didn't read the article. I'm sorry.
That's right. The next is from the Financial Times, which says they have sources that Amazon will share more data with rivals and offer buyers a wider choice of products to assuage EU antitrust regulators, concluding a 3-year probe. Agreement has been set to give more information to online platforms, third-party sellers, and which will put an end to 2 probes into Amazon antitrust issues. And there's a related article that the UK CMA opens an investigation into whether Amazon distorts competition by favoring its own retail business. and sellers using its Prime services, which it probably does. And
That actually is a real issue, by the way.
I,
That is a real issue. Yeah.
I don't doubt that for 2 seconds. Now, exactly, because the previous article was about the UK CMA investigating the antitrust thing with Microsoft's acquisition of Activision, which seems like a waste of time from my perspective. This other one, though, as Ken, you just heard Ken say, he and I are in complete agreement on that. That is worth their time investigating. That's a very worthwhile investigation. The Microsoft Activision acquisition, whatever. That I think you have better things to do. But the article from Financial Times about Amazon making some kind of deal with the EU to put these antitrust probes to rest by offering buyers wider choices of products and sharing more data. Okay. The next is from Bloomberg. Department of Justice.
No, but Tyler, it's not. You see, so Amazon. Here's an interesting issue. We have defined in the United States for the last 40 or 50 years antitrust generally as if consumers get lower prices, therefore there can't be an antitrust violation.
Right.
I think there's a growing sense that it's not just about consumers, it's about is it fair to small businesses?
Right.
Because you have a situation where Amazon is putting small businesses out of business
Out of business.
because they're
Lowering
taking
price.
they're taking their data. In some cases, they're taking the actual products and then coming up and saying, "Oh, we know that this new product is selling well. We'll make one ourselves." And and we know we kind of know how to price it and cost it, and then we'll come up with our own product, and and we'll sell you both products, but we'll sell ours even lower. We'll even sell ours at a loss to make sure until the other one's out of business.
They don't.
So it's
They don't even
it's
have to do that. Really, they
yeah.
can sell it even at a higher cost, but give it far more visibility in the results when you search for that
Oh,
thing.
that too. But even if they were fair on that, it's no, it yeah. So there was I'm gonna pull up the case. There was a case involving headphones or something that I'll bring it up and then you could pin it. That they actually they got sued. They lost on it because they got caught with their hand in the cookie jar. So, but yeah, that's a definite issue.
You know,
Yeah,
the one thing
but
that I would s-
this is beyond Amazon, and then these guys. I mean, the club business has done the same thing as Walmart and all these other people. Those of us who have been in the industry, especially with certain ones, they do ask you for your details of your product, and then you end up having to make a knockoff or fight a knockoff, and then you got to deal with what do we call floor pricing, where even if you want to do a hot deal, you can't do a hot deal because some companies don't allow you to go lower than their private label. So the rise of private label is no different than the rise of what Amazon's doing. So uh, people need to be very careful about this. If the government goes after Amazon, the fat and happy retailers have to think about what they've been doing too for decades.
I was going to make a comment, and this is my personal belief on the BD partnership angle, whether it's Amazon, Facebook, Cisco, whatever. You have to get this really right, and you have to be consistent. Because I think what I'm starting to see is emergence away from the brand some of these companies, and I think to the previous comment about Blizzard and Activision, the third leg of the stool is also sexual advances by their CEO. So I think they're going to bring that into light to have further exploration in that deal. Moving forward, I think some of these tech companies, small, medium, and large, if they're having identity issues around the truth or undercutting their third-party ecosystem players, they have to get in front of that. And if they get it wrong and they're inconsistent or they put their partners out of business, they're going to have massive, massive issues. And I don't mean to talk a lot about the DOJ, but they'll have it at that level, and their customer loyalty is going to go in the tank. So if these companies are trying to redefine them through their partnerships and new use cases and new reach models for food delivery, you've got to get it right. Because if you get it wrong, 2% of the time, that's going to be 100% of what the market remembers. So consistency in terms of execution, I think, is crucial for anybody working on partnerships.
Okay.
I'm done entirely, sorry.
All right. Next up. Just checking here. Oh, the Department of Justice hires Microsoft's former chief economist, Susan Athey, as its top antitrust economist. Sources say Athey will likely be recused from Apple and Google cases. A Stanford University professor and former chief economist at Microsoft is joining the Justice Department as its top antitrust economist. Okay. Next up from Bloomberg, crypto exchange called Bitstamp plans to add a €10 per month fee for non-US accounts that are inactive for over a year with a balance below €200 starting August 1st, which is a very sneaky way to suck a bunch of money out of inactive accounts. Because those people might even have forgotten they even have those accounts if they've been active for a year. And you're going to start sucking out €10 per month out of those accounts. Rather a sneaky move there. That's an interesting way to finance your company. The next is Facebook says it still plans to roll out NFT support to help creators monetize through cross-platform memberships and subscriptions. Someone had a comment there?
No, I was just groaning, Tyler.
Okay.
I gotta love that sound bite. Ben, why don't you record that? That was a perfect sound bite.
I was going to say the same. That was
Yeah, I was
awesome.
going to say the same. Perfect response.
The UK proposes an online safety bill amendment that would force tech firms to scan for and remove child abuse images or be fined up to £18 million or 10% of their annual turnover. We went through this in the US where Apple said they were going to do this. And then
Yes, I think you quantified it as a shitload of money, if I recall right, yesterday.
That's correct. I'm sort of saddened that we have to incentivize people to do the right thing.
the issue is how to do it correctly. Because Apple whispered that they were going to start doing this and were met with tremendous backlash and then walked it back and decided, okay, forget it, we're not going to do it. So how then can the government force them to do it when the users... This was, I don't know, 6 months ago. You guys remember this when iOS, I think it was 15, Apple was saying, oh, by the way, in iOS 15, we're going to start scanning your devices for child abuse images.
It was two
I
different.
think that was a
They're competing. Yeah, they're competing interests there. I think it was more that the government wanted to be
Well,
able to
maybe
read
not.
it. They didn't want encrypted,
No,
and they
no,
were
no.
using potential child abuse as the reason to read everything.
Right, but
As well as Apple.
you'll recall uh, perhaps a soft consensus viewpoint on this stage was that why was Apple doing this? Why does Apple care about this? That behind the scenes it was likely some government hands that were pushing Apple to do this. So in this case, in one sense, it's the government secretly pushing Apple to do scan for this stuff. And then in this case, it's the EU lawmaker saying, no, we really want you. No, we insist you do this. In either case, the market, meaning you, the user, is going to be like, hell no, I don't want you scanning all of my images. Thank you very much. And the cybersecurity researchers and professors and there was the whole signature collection and uproar about, why this is one of those bad policy decisions that can't be executed as planned. So hence why Apple tried to make a good argument for how they could do it, why they should do it, blah, blah, blah. But if Apple can't make a good argument for how it could be done in a safe, secure way that protects people's privacy, good luck to anyone else being able to do that. But now they're going to be able to say, well, no, we as the company aren't wanting to do it. It's the government who's forcing us to do this. We don't want to scan your images, but we have to. I guess if they all have to do it at the same time, then you as a consumer don't even have any choice. And now you've got a little taste of what it's like to be in mainland China under the CCP.
But also, there are a lot of applications that you give access to your phone, and they have the capabilities of scanning your pictures as it is. So, this idea that this isn't happening already is sort of naive, I think.
What happens if you make your own device? You make your own phone out of parts, spare parts. But now I feel like it.
You
It sounds
still have to play with the applications if you want to be
Yeah.
a part of the community,
true.
right? So,
But there will be
And the messaging
there'll be an
side, it,
this is an easy prediction right now. You're going to see open source alternative to Android start to gain traction.
I agree. Yes.
people using the apps like WhatsApp or other messaging services would still be subjected to such a decryption. Although WhatsApp says all the messages are encrypted, if this kind of law is passed, they will have access to everything, all the messages as well, right?
If it's an image, yeah. I think if it's an image, absolutely.
Hmm.
I thought WhatsApp changed their policy so that the end-to-end encryption is not so end-to-end.
Right. I think it's encrypted, not at the. I'm not a techie, but it's encrypted in whatever in transit, but not at the ends. You're right. It's not like end to end, as you might interpret that. And it's. I think, Kyler. I think you're right. Back to the earlier, the 6 months ago, the decisions or the discussion around this was that the government wanted this stuff unencrypted so they could allegedly screen for child abuse or child porn or whatever. And Apple is stronger on privacy and said no, but again, there are a lot of uses they want beyond just that use. It's just that description is very emotional and gets a lot more people involved. So, of course, that surveillance is a lot deeper than just those images. And as Sharon says, everything's being scanned anyway.
Yeah. Okay. The next topic then is IBM acquires a Tel Aviv-based company which develops observability tools for data. Okay. Meta makes its AI translation model for how it translates languages, which supports 200 languages, into open source as part of its work on a universal speech translator. That's cool. And what else? The New York Times says, as crypto markets tumbled, strict regulatory rules on risky bank assets largely insulated Wall Street from the chaos, while retail investors were hit hard. Okay. TechCrunch has a report that Google halts Play Store updates to Kakao Talk, a popular messaging app in South Korea. That's putting it mildly. It's the super app of South Korea.
The super app of thank you.
Yeah. After Kakao continued using an external payment link in its app. Oh, snap. So Kakao was using an external payment link so that people could avoid the Google tax. And so Google halts Play Store updates for Kakao Talk, the most popular app in all of Korea. Wow.
I thought
Oopsie.
that Google knew this though,
Wow.
because there are several different pay links. I remember there being an app like you can link your like I could link my Udi Bank to it and circumvent any Google application for peer-to-peer paying system. I can even go through Kakao or Naver, and intrinsically they have their own local systems. I thought Google knew that when they came into play in this arena.
Hmm. So Reuters says they have sources that India raided Chinese smartphone maker Vivo's offices as part of an investigation into suspected money laundering. And a startup called Voyantis, which develops AI-powered tools to help marketing teams predict a customer's lifetime value. I want to see that pitch. Emerges from stealth with a $19 million seed round. That's a fucking massive seed round, by the way. But if it works as advertised, then it doesn't surprise me, because if you can accurately predict, that's some genius shit right there. If you have I imagine it's a whole bunch of database scraping and aggregating, where they have a massive database of everybody and how much they spend online and blah 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 blah. Your income, your everything, and your transactional history and whatever, so that they know you're a VIP of a buyer of a customer for their product before, and they will pay handsomely to know that. Of course, absolutely. Wouldn't you want to know the get some kind of measure as to how valuable this customer is likely to be? Of course, because then you would spend more on them in your marketing efforts, and you wouldn't want to spend so much on people with that are not likely to be high lifetime value customers. That if you can get if you can get that solution working, oh my god, is that a insanely big company?
The
But
question
they
that's
can collect data for the past, but they can't predict the future. Like, for example, if Tyler plans to retire tomorrow, all the data is good.
No, it is because, for example, just just as a really super crazy simple example, if they know that you are a CTO at a tech company and maybe they've done some really clever shit and they're able to suck in all of your social media and do sentiment analysis on it. They have AIs that can determine based on your tweets that you're probably in the market to buy, change. You're not happy with your Amazon Web Services and you're likely to change cloud service in the near future. Well, if you're Microsoft Azure, you would pay handsomely you would spend additional money to acquire that user for sure. Absolutely.
I think the real question is, what do they do with that data long term? And we've used other platforms, social platforms, to say, okay, hey, in the early days, it was just to do this really cool stuff, lifetime value. And then all of a sudden, you have to meet your shareholder obligations. You have to meet growth obligations. Now, all of a sudden, the chief product officer is now, the chief revenue officer and CEO, and we're in this bubble that we have to constantly fill. Oh, maybe we're going to, consider some different options, and we're going to maybe sell this data in a third-party market, and then all of a sudden, the trust and loyalty and the whole business model goes down. So it'll be interesting to see. Yes, it's a great look in the past and the future. We're only getting better with our predictions. The question is, what sort of, philosophical or trust issues do they come once this company starts growing on its own? Do they grow slow and grow healthy with trust, or do they incur or decide to partner with other people that have other bad intentions, meaning create a marketplace where, we're actually competing with bad information about who Azure would want to invest into somebody in their technology lifecycle. Anyway, I know it's a little bit chicken little, but like, if we've learned anything from the past, this is a great model. Sounds great, but like, are you going to use this tech for good? And it's not to say that we are chicken little. I think that the whole idea about regulation around data and AI and some of this predictive model, excuse me, I guess I get a little choked up when I'm talking about tech. It's early in the morning in California, but I think this is the thing where we're starting to see the government scrutinize this, because like, what are your intentions? Because we can barely wrap our heads around the present. We can't even predict the future. And some of these predictions, there's predictive models that are happening with the war in Ukraine and cyber threats. And what's the likelihood of peace or prolonged war or mutually assured destruction? Those models are out there. And it's pretty scary. Bring that down to an enterprise or a B2B level, and we're getting smart about the future slowly. But and there's a lot of tech for good, but there's also some really scary outcomes. Not to freak everybody out, but I think it's, what are you going to do with these models? And unlike other Web 1 and Web 2, we're seeing more scrutiny and potential regulation, which we should be kind of open-minded to at this point, because it is affecting our geopolitical stance in the world. And Tyler and team, I know you're no stranger to that, but I think that's why these are really interesting. But we have to put that second and third lens on some of these companies and business models. What are we funding? Are we funding the future, or the good of our future, and predicting water levels in erosive environments, which Tyler talked about a couple days ago, or are we using it for good? Those are the two or three lenses that I think we're struggling with right now.
Okay.
So Tyler, and this is not necessarily new news, but I did back channel Cheryl a couple articles, and this as we were talking about it. There's a company called Sonus that makes speakers, and they have sued successfully Google at the ITC for
Yep.
stealing their technology because they were in partnerships with them. They also have
Yep.
accusations against Amazon on their Echo products, and this has been around. I mean, people can Google it on their own. It's kind of a well known stories, and they've been at least successful with Google improving their case. And some of it involves just a pure patent issue, but some of it because anything that involves Amazon's going to involve how the stuff is sold on the Amazon platform for people who are buying speakers. But they also claim that Google stole their data because Google makes all these devices that use technology, and Google stole their data and then underpriced competitive products. So very similar issue. So and I gave Cheryl a whole bunch of stories. If she wants to pin a couple of those, she can. But there's tons of stories involving Sonus, Sonus. People can look it up. Tons of stories involving both
You
Google
mean
and Amazon.
Sonos? SONOS.
Son, yeah, OS, yes, OS,
Yeah.
yes, correct.
Ken, that's an amazing example of what we're talking about at a B2C level. Perfect example.
So the next topic is the Senate Intelligence Committee has asked the FTC, that's Lena Khan, and the Senate Intelligence Committee is run by U.S. Senator Mark Warner and Marco Rubio. And so they've asked Lena Khan over at the FTC to investigate whether TikTok misled lawmakers about employee accessing American user data, which, as I recall, they did, because TikTok's been claiming for a very long time that that's been sealed off. And the question is, did they ever perjure themselves under any kind of oath, under any kind of like Senate hearing or something? Which I know they participated in a few Senate hearings, and I
Yeah,
believe,
but Tyler,
yeah,
well, I would say this is back to all the stuff that goes on between these apps. Same as when Facebook was saying that TikTok had all those, punch your teacher apps and everything else. There's a lot of lobbying dollars from Google and Facebook behind this because it's a competitive platform. Yes, it's going to China, but these guys are all collecting shit tons of data on us and using it in whatever way they want. So this is, yes, it's going to China. That's a concern, but this is probably much more backed by other competitive platforms.
okay. I mean, just as a little anecdotal footnote, the Zuckerberg did when Facebook was on the receiving end of a whole lot of hot shit from mainstream media. He did say, "Are you sure you want to take us out? Because then you're going to open Pandora's box for TikTok, and wait till you see what you think we're bad. Wait till you see what TikTok's doing." And so I think it was through Facebook's meetings with senators and government agencies that they, in the back channels, were alerting the government to all of the crazy shit that they knew TikTok was up to. And now,
Facebook is just, I mean, TikTok's just more effective. That's what it is. I mean, literally, yes, it's China, and we can all get, yeah, I'm not discounting that at all, but it's their TikTok is far like highly more effective, and it's eating Meta's lunch right now, and so they are definitely lobbying against this stuff. And again, they've done these tactics before. Um, Again, they admitted to doing that, lying about TikTok with those challenges, that those are actually stuff that they'd spun up on Facebook. So, they're having some problems right now. And they want to deflect as well because they are in the news right now for Meta for getting health data via pixels. I haven't dug into that article. I'm sure you guys have covered it. But it's not like you can't say, oh, you think we're bad, they're worse. It's like, why don't you clean up your act? And these guys are eating your lunch. So that's what goes on right now. And it's fair. I mean, that's what you do. You lobby against them, but just understand where it's coming from.
well,
I've used TikTok and I use Instagram. I use Instagram Reels, and just as a consumer, I like TikTok better. I think it's look and feel.
100%.
Yeah,
100%. And I'm
yeah.
I'm on TikTok. I don't use Instagram. Yeah.
Yeah, how much is that? How much of that is the content creators, and how likely are those people to migrate? Because I don't find the interface appealing at
It's a different
all.
model.
So
It's a
for
different
me, it's a little confusing. So I'm curious what you people actually like about the interface.
Instagram, and so Reels on Instagram was spun up as you to your friends and your community and building your friends. TikTok is about people like you and people who have interests like you. So you can follow people, but it's based on, I mean, you might know them, you might I don't give it access to my contacts, but it's people like me. So whatever I like. So like I've got lots of news articles, I've got comedians, I've got that's what's in my feed. Yours would be very different, but that's what is their secret sauce. Is they're very effective with that algorithm of delivering things that are interesting to you. And it's something that people are going to for their news, for events, and for entertainment. I can look at it for 10 minutes if I need a happy break. But that's my personal use of it. You know,
That sounds like you've given away a lot of personal information or private information to get that kind of level of customization or
well, I use it. I use it. So you're right. They have a profile of me, but that's so I do use it. But you've done the same thing every time you use a Meta product or a Google product. So the difference, my view on this is we are giving up our data everywhere that we go. As we said, we have a huge digital exhaust, and people could look that up and see. The concern is, what does that mean, and how will it be used? And the how it's used is in these disinformation campaigns or information from marketing, which is like sub level zero, to kind of poking you down rabbit holes. Oh, you like this? Let's put you a little bit farther down that rabbit hole. Oh, you are against this? Let's put you a little bit further with people who don't believe that. And it's watching how you're being influenced or impacted by the digital world and across all these platforms because it is cross platform. So that's people are going to use these. It's understanding how you navigate them and how they are being used on you.
So I could give you an actual, use case in this. So the only thing I kind of really spend a lot of time on either one of those platforms for is for like restaurant reviews in Las Vegas. So I get a lot of those because first of all, I click on the likes. Okay, I follow the people that are the creators who put this stuff up. So I see a lot of ton of stuff where people go into Las Vegas restaurants, take pictures of the food, describe the food, tell you what to, okay, all of that. I get a lot of that, but that's self-selective. It's not like it wasn't like they stole it from me. I said I like this stuff. I'm following these creators, and they give me a lot of this stuff. A lot of them post to both Reels and TikTok. And when I say that TikTok's better, it's like if I want to like continuously follow from one video clip to another video clip in TikTok, it's very easy to do that. Where like Reels, it's like I lose. Sometimes I lose the continuity. It like moves me from a food video to say maybe a Circus Soleil video or something. It's like I've got to constantly go back and forth because it just does it's just not smooth. Literally just the way you interact with the app is different. Okay, and it's easier for me to navigate myself around TikTok to follow the stuff and to find the stuff I want to find than it is on Reels. And that's the point I was trying to
Yeah.
make.
Also, Ken, and back to I think it was Charles's earlier point as well. So, Ken, yeah, but that they are getting that information on you. You're giving it to them that you want those restaurant reviews, and that's what they have on you. But they can infer a lot more, and they do infer, as does Meta. But we did a deep dive on. Well, we didn't even need to do a deep dive. The TikTok privacy policies, 13 pages. It's pretty straightforward. They take everything about you that you can imagine, and they use it in lots of ways, but it's not any more than Meta does. Meta's privacy policy is maybe 30 or 50 pages. It says the same thing, but with a lot more legalese and nuance. So they're doing the same things. TikTok and using and capturing the same data. And trust me, it's the data from the phone, your data from whatever devices you're using to connect to your mobile device, etc. It listens to you. They both do. But so it's a ton. But people are in
So
this
the
world.
so Jennifer, the difference is again, and mentioned it at the beginning of when you're going through this. It's basically it's a foreign adversary, right? It's a foreign state, so it's not the same. Even though you have mentioned that it's everybody else has it, they do. Big IT in America has all our shit. Google, Facebook, or Meta, whatever, they all have it, but it's a foreign adversary, right? We've gone through news where they're trying to collect DNA on every single American. So it's just how much do you want to give up? We give up a lot to American companies. How much do we want to give up to a foreign adversary? So that's all. I'm John.
Yeah, and directly through this via getting it elsewhere. I mean, we surveil them as well, so or we surveil other countries. We're all in this. All of these countries are doing this, but yeah, I mean, we are giving it directly to a foreign adversary.
Okay. So the next, I think we go into the tweets now, if I'm not mistaken. Uh, yeah. Oh well, there's an interest. TechCrunch says the UK signs its first data sharing deal with South Korea, allowing organizations in the two countries to transfer data without restrictions. There's your sovereign cloud kind of diplomacy going on. Now that the sovereign clouds are in place, now you're going to have, they realize that data is just as valuable as physical goods, and now there's going to be systems for trade agreements of data trade between sovereign clouds. It's wild. And those are your boring headlines. And now we get to do the tweets as we do. And the first one I have today is from Thomas Tong. The Chinese engineers have successfully used a drag sail technology in space to collect space junk. The drag sail is a kite-like membrane that measures 25 square meters, or 270 square feet, when fully unfurled, to suck up some of that space junk that could cause a whole shit show of explosions if the space junk starts colliding with each other in the satellites in the low Earth orbit and whatnot. So good that they get that out of there. Before I go into the other tweets, did anyone have a tweet that they found since we met last time that they think we should share? Going once, going twice.
I sent one this morning from The Guardian about TikTok.
What? I'll look for it if you can go ahead and explain what you recall.
Yeah, hang on a second. I'm driving. Let me try to pull it up. But basically, it was another story of two girls dying in. It's just covered by The Guardian and not by a U.S. paper. So par for the course
Families,
here.
families who well, there's one from an hour ago. It says
The
families
one in
sue
UK.
TikTok. Yeah, it says families sue TikTok after girls died while trying the blackout challenge. Parents blame platform's algorithms for choking deaths of 8 and 9-year-olds. The families of two young girls who allegedly died as a result of a viral TikTok challenge have sued the social media platform, claiming its dangerous algorithms are to blame for their children's deaths. Parents of the two girls who died in a 2021 blackout challenge on TikTok which encouraged users to choke themselves until they pass out, filed a suit on Tuesday in the LA County Superior Court. Quote, TikTok needs to be held accountable for pushing deadly content to these two young girls. TikTok has invested billions of dollars to intentionally design products that push dangerous content that it knows is dangerous and can result in the deaths of its users. Oh, here's the money shot quote. She, meaning the young girl, she was also under the belief that if she posted a video of herself doing the blackout challenge, then she would become famous, and so she decided to give it a try. She was 8 years old at the time and did not appreciate or understand the dangerous nature of what TikTok was encouraging her to do. TikTok unquestionably knew that the deadly blackout challenge was spreading through their app and that their algorithm was specifically feeding the blackout challenge to children, including those who have died. Now, boy, can I get really irate over this, as I have done in the past, as you have heard me do if you join us every day. Because why is this story, this is happening in the LA Superior Court. Why are we reading about it yet once again in UK press and not the US mainstream press? Why is the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post on a rampage on every possible negative thing they can find about Facebook and Instagram? And here we have young people dying and a really good argument about how social media platforms really, really, really actually hurting young people, which is what they're claiming they are irate about. Well, here it is. Here's actual deaths. So where's your story about this? And they are silent.
Where's
Again,
Ronan Farrow, and can we get the catch a kill story of the century?
and by the way, if you've been following tech news every day for many months, you know this is not the first time this has happened. That the US mainstream media goes silent and the UK media are telling the story. And it's a US fucking story.
Well, we're
Why
good
is
at that.
mainstream US media silent about the thing they claim to be most interested about, which is protecting young users of social media? Well, they certainly are obsessed when it's happening on Instagram or Facebook, but if it happens on TikTok, we don't give a shit. Why is that?
Throw the rock and hide your hand.
So incredibly despicable. It is the antithesis of hypocrisy. I can't think of a more egregious example of hypocrisy.
So Tyler, I mean, on this subject, related to this subject, because I always think that you're not necessarily wrong, but a little bit too harsh on some of these platforms. That this is not necessarily anything new, because anything that has for profit in it, it has a potential to be exploited just because there's money involved. So HBO Max has a docuseries coming out. I was just reading about it today in the Huffington Post, but it's HBO Max produced it, and it's a I think they're focusing on a band called Menudo that some of us might remember from the '80s and in the late '70s, but mostly the
Oh
'80s.
my
That
God, the Puerto Rican band, Ken
Yeah, the Puerto
Menudo.
Rican band that Ricky
Oh
Martin
my goodness,
started,
God, you just
and
brought
it's
me back memories.
and they're talking about exploitive boy bands, and they're using using Menudo as kind of like the case study. But there's other boy bands that have been exploited. So this is like an in-depth thing on Menudo, and it seems that there's a history. I mean, you could go back to Jackie Coogan back in the early part of the 20th century. Child actors, we had to pass special laws to protect child actors from being exploited by their parents. Okay, you know, the problem is children getting exploited because there's money involved is as old as the ages. Okay, and so I just think Facebook or whatever else you're pointing out, or TikTok, this is just the 21st century technology that's catching up with us. I don't think it's a new issue. And I think if you want to get at that issue, you need to get at the underlying issue that's existed for over 100 years. Okay, anytime you've got children that can be exploited and there's money involved, you got a problem, even from their parents, by the way. Because one of the reasons we have special laws in this country, in the United States anyway, protecting the earnings of childhood actors, because their own parents either swindled or just blew fortunes that these kids made as child actors. Okay, so now we have rules about having to have fiduciaries on those accounts, special accounts that money has to go into. We have regulations about they have to have tutors. If they're actors, they have to have tutors on the set to make sure they get educated. I mean, but this is not new, okay? And I just wanted to point it out. Okay, I'm
Tyler,
done.
Tyler, this article was covered by LA Times 5 days ago.
Yeah, it's in the LA Superior Court.
It's
But
in
LA
LA
Times,
Times. LA Times 5 days ago. It was covered in the
right?
article.
And LA Times is read by people in fucking Los Angeles.
Hmm.
That's not U.S. mainstream media. It's not like New York Times. New York Times is at least U.S. and I would even say international publication. When you go to an airport lounge in any city of the world, they'll have the New York Times. You will not find the L.A. Times. You won't find the L.A. Times outside of major U.S. cities, like the top 5 U.S. cities.
To your point, Tyler, I would liken this to as a New Yorker. If anything came into, like, I read anything from the Daily News, for example, that was really local. It wasn't main news. But if it were in the New York Times, then I knew this was something I needed to pay attention to. So yeah, there's even for the reader, we take the cues from the institution as to what sort of articles they're focusing on, as to how important it is nationally.
That's not fair to the LA Times. It may not be the New York Times, but having lived in both New York and LA, the LA Times, in terms of their coverage and their breadth of coverage, particularly international coverage, is way above the Daily News. It's not even. It's much closer to the New York Times than it is to the New York Daily News. So it may not. So it's somewhere in between, but closer to the New York
Yeah,
Times.
in terms of quality, yes, LA Times is actually. I loved. I was a daily reader, and when I say daily reader, I read the physical LA Times front to back with every page in between for years. Every single article, I saw every article for
That's me
years,
with New York Times.
That's
and
amazing. You used to get tweets delivered, yo. That's a different
yeah,
era.
I really enjoy the LA Times. I have very positive sentiments about the LA Times. My point isn't that it isn't a quality publication. My point's just that the amount of influence that it has. It's not the mainstream media like it doesn't have the same level of mainstream adoption that we reserve for the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times and the Washington Post and the regular suspects. It's a great they do good work, but it's just not at the in the it's not the A League is my point to address Cheryl's point. Um,
Can I just get us back on the subject? I have 8-year-old twins, and this hits close to home, and it can't hit close to the investor home if the investor is China. China doesn't allow this. China has the control over people's behavior all the time, and they know what a nuclear family is. But we've got divided families and hard to parent kids, and we don't have protections over childhood actors, and we've just had kids accidentally commit suicide while we just talked about how it's okay if some school shooters would have killed themselves if they wanted to. And the juxtaposition is gross, and I don't like TikTok being something I have to think about. Will my ex let my kid, or sorry, will the play date of the parent that I don't know where my kid might go in a year or two allow some video that gets mentally into my kid's head and they do something that I never even talked to them about because it's so ridiculous?
Yeah, I thought that was the whole challenge of parenting from the beginning, that you had to prepare your child. It just seems the world is a lot more dangerous, but the suggestibility, hey, don't do anything an app tells you to do. It's kind of like back in the day we said, hey, don't believe everything you see on TV, right? So I think there just needs to be that same sort of common sense reemerge.
Whatever happened to don't talk to strangers? Reinforced by parents. It's just a digital age where you have to remind them. But there are a lot of challenges.
Yeah, as a parent, I don't want the government being the one to parent my child. If it's not TikTok, it might be the newfangled social media next time. I mean, am I looking for the government to be being the one to protect them? That's ridiculous.
No.
Amen, Phil. Amen.
But that is effectively the role that the Chinese government takes at the family table in Chinese families in China, right? That they are part of the family. They're helping construct society, and people have a different level of trust, whereas here in the West, we have a certain level of distrust naturally of the government. There, even though there is opposition to the government, the narrative is, structurally very different.
Yeah, but some of the things that they're trying to hold on to is some of the traditions. I get all the other stuff people could say about them, but fealty, the importance of family, the core family, they're trying to reinforce those things. Granted, we may not like the way they're doing it, but it's not all bad.
I'm not saying it's bad. The government will just never keep up with the dangers that are out there. So, as a parent, if I'm going to be a good parent, I'm going to be on top of that. Where are you? I want you home by 10 o'clock. I want all those stuff. I don't need the government doing it for me. So, a lot of people use that as an excuse. Why is the government not looking at my kids?
I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying, why are we letting China exploit our kids for money? They don't have the protections of the childhood actors that this whole Ken fractal path went down about. This nothing's different. Well, you can't control what your kids see everywhere, and I'm not trying to. But there's an age at which, why did we let China let our kids think that they could perform for the world and get the attention of the world. Well, that's just
David,
performance.
the answer
Performance
to
for
your
the world is
question
the
is
same thing
simple.
as a school shooter. School shooters think they're performing for the world. They're putting themselves out there. I'm not saying it's okay at all, and I'm not saying that we have the answers at all. But we can't put a flag in the ground and say what TikTok is doing to kids is wrong. I thought that was the heart of the argument. Now
No,
we're talking about how we're divided over media being not mainstream and
well,
not.
honestly, I could have said rap and hip hop is bad, and anything that talked about the devil
No,
was
no,
bad
that's
too. Why can't we
whataboutism.
back up?
That's whataboutism, and that's false equivalence. I'm talking about what's the end result of TikTok. Can we at least become, I don't know, interdisciplinary for a moment and look
False
at the
equivalent. I
extent.
look at the black community now that dresses like shit and acts stupid, and other people who try to act like hood rats. I mean, do you not think that the stamping of the music and the whatever you called it that pushed a certain type of music that was accepted, no different than TikTok, just a little bit more tech.
But David, let's deal with the platforms because you brought what I set up. All I'm saying is there isn't much difference between TikTok and Reels other than TikTok is a more effective platform. So as you got rid of TikTok, you have Reels doing the same thing. And eventually they would get more effective at what they're doing. It's more about social media than it is about whether it's owned. Some people are talking about the data going back to China. I really don't care that the Chinese know that I like seafood, so that's great. Okay. But other than that issue, in terms of the issue with children, all social media does this. And if we get rid of the Chinese owned social media, we still have tons of it. We still have an enormous amount of it. I mean, and it would be from American companies. So all the problems that you're talking about, David, would be given to us by American companies,
I did
and
not
they
talk
are
about
given
all
to
the
us by American
problems.
companies. What?
For a minute, let me defend what I was saying. I want to be interdisciplinary. I want to bring up the concept that brings up the meta level of what China could do if they were thinking about America as an enemy and they wanted to get us to not like each other and be stressed out all the time, and how they could put away a Marxist view that capitalism sucks. That's what it gives you, the exploitation of children while they exploit our children. So it go to what Chris would say. You can design things to be safe. I, as an engineer in encryption data security for Dell for years, while I had twins, I know that principle. We're not asking the platforms because you're right, government can't do it well. They can't do it effectively. But here in Tech News, let's talk about what may be going on at a meta level and what safeguards we would want for our kids. Could they
All the
hash these
Chinese are
kind
eyes
of
on
files and
page.
not send them
They're
content
all
to
designing for
10-year-olds
eyes
maybe?
on page. They're all
David,
designing for
there's a
eyes on
very
page.
simple
Yeah.
solution, David. Why don't you just delete the app from your child's phone?
My child doesn't have it on their phone. They never will. I don't have it on my phone. But here's the problem. We're only looking at it at the micro and the macro and not the meta level. That this is what causes the anxiety and depression and mental health of children to need to go to school. And during the pandemic, you don't think there are kids outside of that have been given an iPad as a daycare device? I'm not saying they're my kids. But I'm around the town. Every city, every metro area has been balkanized and gerrymandered. So this is all over the place. If these shootings being everywhere and ubiquitous, you're not safe from it anywhere. It wasn't downtown Chicago. This wasn't the south side of Chicago. So I'm just trying to extend here the concepts of, can we design for safety these apps to not send that kind of content to people under the age of something. We can program what that age is, but I think an 8-year-old seems. I don't want any 8-year-old thinking a pass out challenge is okay.
So first off, I'm from South Africa. But anyway, beyond that point, I think, what are you going to do in the meantime while you're waiting for the government to legislate what you could do as a parent?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe Europe's getting it. We're talking about how these subliminal messages came through Apple and then are coming to the European Union. And since they don't have a dog in the fight, maybe they will do something. I'm just trying to have a conversation about the people that are sophisticated enough to talk about what would be a designed corner case, yes, but is not an only a pure critique of the media, but that is definitely involved as well.
The next article that I have is, and I don't pick the sequence here. Tomoko has this one from the Telegraph, that China uses mind-reading AI to test loyalty of Communist Party members. An AI program reads facial expressions and brain waves to discern the level of acceptance for ideological and political education.
Yay, no more privacy. Yay, no more sovereignty of one's own mind and thoughts.
I think that's easy to
Did we ever
thwart.
have that?
All they have to do is eat chocolate.
Exactly.
So China claims it has developed AI to read the minds of Communist Party members to test their loyalty. The Smart Political Education Bar uses AI to read facial expressions and brain waves to, quote, discern the level of acceptance for ideological and political education, according to a video from the Institute of AI at Hefei Comprehensive National Science Center. Communist Party members can then be assessed in the levels of, quote, determination to be grateful to the party, listen to the party, and follow the party. The AI
Wow,
program
that's a next level of surveillance and control there. Next level.
The AI program raises further questions about China's level of surveillance, which now routinely includes facial recognition technology. It will likely, right, because now that facial recognition is mass scale and widely adopted and widely understood and widely, well, accepted might not be the right word, but
No, but
adopted.
Tyler, you could potentially get hauled off to prison because some algorithm, calculated that you weren't loyal to the party. This is
Well, right, no, but
scary. There's a
what,
glitch in the
more
algorithm.
importantly is once the cameras are in place, the cameras are dumb on their own. The AI can enable the image streams from the cameras. If it can, you can add facial recognition. They've already added the facial recognition layer to the cameras, so facial recognition is happening writ large across China. There's also reports that they've also added gait detection, which is they can identify you even if they can't see your face. So, and this was happening in Hong Kong with the protesters who were intentionally covering their faces because they knew there was facial recognition going on in Hong Kong during the protests. It didn't matter because they had implemented what's called the gait detection features so that you can be identified by your height and body size and the way that your body actually moves. Just like similarly,
I,
you can be identified by your keyboard typing patterns
They
and mouse.
originally said for the Boston bomber, they were able to detect who has a sufficiently heavy backpack based on their gait analysis. So that was kind of, I think, the first time
Right.
it was
But
publicly discussed.
I want to make the main point here is that the next stage, beyond adding the facial recognition to the cameras, is to add the sentiment, emotional state analysis to the facial recognition. So that it's not just the facial recognition isn't just used to identify the person, it's used to add an incredibly complex sentiment analysis of the thoughts of the person. They can tell that you're disgruntled or you're happy or you're sad or you're lonely or you're ready to kill somebody or you're loyal to the CCP. And as far fetched as you might think that is, let me introduce you to some articles about this particular poker playing algorithm, which can outperform the vast majority of humans. It can outperform nearly all humans, with the exception of the very best poker players, in playing poker, which is the art and science of deception. That's what poker is when you get down to the brass tacks of it. It's the most pure, concentrated form of deception and ability to detect that deception. That's what the essence of poker is. So, algorithms that can play poker are now being able to play at a surprisingly high level, beating out, as I said, mere mortals, and is not yet beating the best in the world, but make no mistake, it likely will in our lifetime. So my point is, if it's able to detect lying and bluffing and participate in a poker match with some degree of respectability, it's like it's not far off to assume that these algorithms will be able to detect happiness and the other range of emotions as well, especially again even when the user's trying their best to conceal it.
Yeah, I question whether that's realistic. I mean, I don't doubt that that's a goal of theirs, but I tweeted just an article. This is something I've been doing a lot of research on over the last couple of weeks, and I think I mentioned last week that I sat in on a talk where the researcher said that we're nowhere close to being able to make decisions based on people's facial expressions or emotions. And I think the comment that I took away from it that I love is like we can't tell the difference between somebody's eating chocolate or having an orgasm. So I don't think we're there, but I
Mm,
wouldn't doubt that the Chinese government, that would be ideal for them.
right. Yeah, I think you're referring to the neurotransmitter response to chocolate and orgasm.
It was related to emotional expressions, to AI being able to read people's facial expressions to determine whether they're happy. I think the talk was specifically about reading people, doing video interviews of people, and being able to tell if they were trustworthy based on their facial expressions to questions.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
one.
just wait until the churches get their hands on this. You'd have a definitely new inquisition.
Well,
I was actually, oh, sorry.
wait until the capitalists get their hands on this. Can you imagine how much a website would pay to know, or advertisers would pay?
The
You could,
social inquisition.
no, you could build an advertising network so that you could target users who are in particular mind states. You want to target people who are happy or sad or depressed or suicidal. Now you can do that. Well,
Well,
what other ad network
but
allows you to do that? Go ahead.
but you need to sorry but you need to continually monitor. I mean, I think what poker playing, to my knowledge, involves is you can't actually tell if someone's bluffing the first time you play them. You have to wait to establish their norm and then their tells, right? It couldn't tell a blank person, like a brand new person. It couldn't tell necessarily, except to the extent that they use, I think, micro expressions are what people have been using to be like lie detectors or to determine falsity. And this has been like something that's come out of the FBI, this idea of being able to detect and use micro expressions. So they
What about,
they'll
I'm sorry, what about using browsing history? It couldn't tell from that? I'm
no,
just kind of jumping
this is
into this. I'm
literally
sorry.
from,
Yeah.
sorry, this is from when we're talking about facial expressions. So your browsing history, not yet, right? It's not on your facial expression. It can be if you ask the right questions, I guess. But for this, for the most part, I think it's not that accurate until there's a certain base familiarity with a person. Doesn't mean you have to know them well. It just means you have to interact with them in a number of situations. Even lie detectors require a baseline where they see what truth telling looks like on you. Although they're measuring things like heart rate as opposed to I mean, all of them are subjective and controllable. Micro expressions have never been proven to be even like 90% accurate. So there, I don't know how well any of this AI really works. I think the problem is really going to be trying to argue against someone's supposition. Well, the AI said that you were depressed, so we're going to, and suicidal, so we're going to, put you in a, in for your own safekeeping, we're going to put you on a 72-hour hold. Like, that's the kind of thing that is really concerning to me, because how can there can't be a way right now that they make accurate assumptions. They're still guessing. So if they're guessing, they can guess wrong. And if they take action based on it, that could be problematic.
Valerie, to your point, actually goes perfectly to the next article. Tomoko found from NBC News, police sweep Google searches to find suspects. The tactic is facing its first legal challenge. Privacy advocates are watching the case closely, concerned that the police could use reverse keyword searches to investigate people who seek information about certain topics.
Like searching through the trash can, right? You can
Uh,
tell around the trash cans as well.
right. Well, they're most interested in states where abortion is illegal for people searching for abortion. So it says a teen charged with setting a fire that killed 5 members of an immigrant family in Denver has become the first person to challenge police use of Google search histories to find someone who might have committed a crime. The pushback against the surveillance tool known as reverse keyword searching is being closely watched by privacy and abortion rights advocates who are concerned that it could soon be used to investigate women who search for information about obtaining an abortion in states that are now illegal. In documents filed Thursday in Denver, lawyers for the 17-year-old argue that the police violated the Constitution when they got a judge to order Google to check its vast database of internet searches for users who typed in the address of a home before it was set ablaze on August 5th. 3 adults and 2 children died in the fire. That search of Google's records helped point investigators to the teen and 2 friends who were eventually charged in the deadly fire, according to police records. All were juveniles at the time of their arrests. 2 of them, including a 7-year-old, are being tried as adults. They both pleaded not guilty. The defendant in juvenile court has not yet entered a plea. The lawyers say the search and all evidence that came from it should be thrown out because it amounted to a blind expedition through billions of Google users' queries based on a hunch that a killer typed the address into the search bar. That, the lawyers argued, violated the Fourth Amendment, which protects against unreasonable searches. Quote, people have a privacy interest in their internet search history, which is really an archive of your personal expressions, says the lead litigator from the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers.
I don't
Uh,
think that's going to apply when you take a life. So if they have other evidence that can be put together, I think it's going to be really hard to say, hey, look, this crumb that got us to find you, well, we maybe we're violating your privacy, but you basically took somebody's life. So in all things considered,
right. I don't know. This is a great debate we could have here. We could do a poll like we used to do in the old days. Like, raise your hand in the audience if you think police should be able to do these reverse searches to find and people who searched for the address of this house that was shot up or the name of this person who was murdered or whatever.
Oh, Tyler, I would love to see the results of that.
Would you?
Wouldn't this be similar to the cases in the past that where they've tried to subpoena the Amazon Alexa data for what was said in households where murders have taken place?
Right. Okay, let's do the
Well,
audience poll.
before data, they used to do the librarians. You guys remember that? So times have changed.
Who checked out books under certain topics and stuff?
Exactly.
Okay, let's do the quick hand raise poll. So if you're in the audience and you have access to the raise hand button, normally you use the raise hand button because you want to jump on stage. In this case, we're going to use it to take a quick poll. So click the raise your hand button if you think police should be able to subpoena Google to search their records for search queries. And we'll count the number of hand raises, and then we'll do the other side of that question and see which side has more hand raises. So we're up to 14, 15, 17, 18, 19, 20, and going. And again, raise your hand if you think police should be able to ask Google to assist with data investigations.
Does it depend as Eric was saying on the offense if it was resulting in one or more murders?
It doesn't matter. In
Could
this
it be
case,
No, the actual query, you guys, they're going to get data from Google broadly. So in the arson, sorry, the arson, super broad.
You're in the matrix.
you're in the matrix. Jennifer, you're in
Can't
the
hear
matrix.
you, Jennifer.
I'm muting you, Jennifer. So, okay, so we got up to
20?
21. So hands down,
21?
please. Everyone who had your hand up, please put your
Okay,
hands
I'll
down.
reset.
Yep, we're going to reset the hand raise.
Okay, it's open
Okay,
now.
now raise your hands if you think police should not be able to subpoena Google for these types of searches. So we're already at 21, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32, 33, 34, 37, 38, 40,
Wow.
double.
Yep.
So almost exactly double. So it's 2 to 1.
Could we ask the follow-up question of the quantifier?
What was the of in cases of murders?
Yeah.
I think it's implicit. It's like if you don't think they should, then you don't think they should under any circumstance. So anyway, that was a rough napkin example that 2/3 think that they shouldn't be able to, 1/3 think they should be able to. Which that doesn't surprise me. That's about what I think it would be.
Realize,
It's
Tyler, like people like myself didn't vote because we're driving, so I didn't even vote. So there might
that's
be
fine.
people who didn't vote for other
But
reasons.
but is anyone surprised by that outcome?
And
I'm
this
very
is why
surprised.
democracy doesn't work, Ken. Okay?
That's voting.
I'm very surprised by that outcome. Very
Why?
surprised.
Why? Why are you surprised?
People voted for privacy. Tech tech people voted for privacy. That's who
Ah,
does.
It's about interpretation, though, because just because you searched for something doesn't necessarily mean that you had one intent. There are multiple intents for why you
Yeah.
searched for something.
right,
The
right,
You
the
can't
relation
prove
is not
intent.
that strong. Yeah.
right. My point, yeah, fair enough. I mean, they're going to get. By the way, other variations of this happen all the time where police will ask the cell phone companies, hey, we need to see everybody who was at this location at this time. That happens all thousands of times a day. So, should they not be able to do that? Would be an interesting vote. But that,
Oh,
you
I
can.
would love to see that
But that
replay.
can prove the alibi. That means if the criminal is there or not, that can be provide proved by that data. But a search result doesn't really mean you did it or
Right.
not.
So, why not? Just to play devil's advocate here, let's say you searched for something and it puts you into a very small cohort of potential suspects.
Like
And then,
Capitol
of course,
Hill on January 6th.
yeah, the question, well, by the way, there's your cell phone tower data. That was used in that exact case, by the way. So in the search query lookup, if you have some, you're going to be asked, no doubt. I mean, these was it 2 or 3 people who were that are involved in this court case about the Denver house. You know, if they're going to ask everybody who was returned by Google, hey, why did you search for that house, right? And a lot of these examples come down to this. It gives the state some sort of power over the citizens, and in my mind it comes down to, do we or do we not want this? Well, I like to add, I think, to me, the important distinction is, do you or do you not? It depends on which government we're talking about. If we're talking about Norway, yeah, generally I would be okay with it. Are we talking about a government that I don't trust? Hell no, I don't want them having that ability. Hell no. Russia. If I lived in Russia, would I want Russia to have that capability? Hell no. Sweden? Yeah, I think I'd be okay with Sweden having that access
But
to that. I don't. I don't.
Tyler,
Yeah.
Tyler, but I mean, you really don't. I mean, I mean, the people in America really don't trust your police intelligence at all. I'm sure they are getting information just for investigation. They will definitely not draw conclusion just based on that data, right? It's just part of the investigation, right? So why is it such a big deal to share with them some data for data crunching? I mean,
Because
they need
they've
to
lost.
investigate a case. They need to have as much information as they can, right?
They
They're
do,
not going
Cheryl.
to judge you based on what. Yes.
Cheryl, this is Rob. No, it's about trust. And I think where the trust has been lost and it can be gained is where we have not held them accountable when they have done those searches not specifically for those particular cases, or they've withheld information that they gained that probably would have benefited the other person from the searches they've gotten. It's the inconsistency and the contradictions that have hurt their level of trust with the general public, but they can fix that.
Okay, so for the sake of argument, let's talk about the cost of investigations. The cost of investigations is usually what stops the investigation based on the cost of the crime. We could make this kind of search super inexpensive so the police could use it all the time, thereby lowering the bar for all crimes. At what point does it become acceptable? It's a very slippery slope.
The Okay. whole point of information
Welcome
and
back,
ownership
Nicholas.
ownership of that information is that things change in time. So whilst you may be happy with the Swedish government today, you may not be happy with it tomorrow. Whilst you may be happy with the government today in America, you may not be happy tomorrow. And Yes. ultimately, you should be able to participate in society by giving private yet provable information to duly authorized authorities and provide them with attestations, which are the rules of the land, the laws of the land. And if you subject yourself to the laws of that land, then you will have to provide them with the information that they desire. It does not mean that they should have control of that information, and it does not mean that that information should be stored on centralized repositories. And that is, the key to democracy is that our elections are founded on garbage in, garbage out. And so until we refine and we understand how to have self-evidently true information that is created through consensus, because we come to our own truths, we cannot we cannot progress. But luckily, those technologies now exist.
Would those kind of systems allow black box searches? Like, if I wanted to have this kind of search, could I
Yep,
implement it in
you
such a
would you
black
would
box
search
system?
in the field, and you would narrow down those that were not able to provide proofs. So you can, instead of surveilling, you can, when you have the information space mapped with private yet provable zero knowledge proofs, you can ask questions. It's sort of like guess who instead of total surveillance.
Oh, okay. That's really interesting.
Okay. So I think we have. I only have two more articles. Two a kind of interesting one. Evan found one about a project called the Sahara Forest Project, which is a farm flourishing in the Sahara Desert, using abundant resources like arid land, seawater, and sunlight to restore vegetation by producing fresh water and clean energy in the desert. So I retweeted that to the Tech News Twitter account. Thank you for that, Evan. That's really interesting. And then I found an interesting tweet thread today about, and it has a few articles about Turkey is reporting that they just found or discovered nearly 700 metric tons of rare earth metals, which is 6 times the size of all other global reserves and 15 times the reserves of China, which currently And dominate. impossible to extract commercially, just like the Ugandan gold reserves. It says it's enough for more than 1,000 years of current demand. And then the tweet thread says, if Turkey succeeds in scaling rare earth extraction, as Nicholas is pointing out, it's one thing to discover it, it's another thing to distract it, and it's yet another thing to put it through the supply chain. If you extract it at a price that's higher than its value, it's a Right, problem. right.
The
There's
other
that.
thing not covered is it takes less than 100,000 tons. You can put all of the rare earths mined in a year on a single ship. It's not a lot of physical material. In fact, when you look at the amount of energy it takes to extract things, it's not actually that much more than just melting the whole thing down from any patch of dirt in the world. Rare earths aren't actually rare. You can get them anywhere. The only difference is whether or not you think that it's worth the price of doing so. The thing is, the price is arbitrary. Prices are made up. We essentially say that the military subsidizes a lot of these expenses because they say they want to have advanced materials, magnets, batteries, etc. Some fun things for the fighter jets. So they just basically make up the cost that they're willing to pay for arbitrary, like random, like vanadium or something like that.
It's
The
like
thing is
it's the
that if
same.
you're actually willing to consider the arbitrary nature of this and view it purely as energy, you can take any patch of dirt in the world and gain strategic, like autonomy from this. It's
It
just
is.
that's not they delegate strategic autonomy to free market stuff, and now they're going, oh no, well, how are we going to figure this out? And they've been doing it for a decade or two, so it's really weird.
It is exactly the same as the idiots who wanted to go and mine an asteroid for gold, saying we'd have a huge amount of gold. Well, if you have a huge amount of gold, it's not worth anything. Same people who say, well, you got all this, all these things are based on its scarcity. So if it's no longer scarce, it's no longer valuable.
Like, hold on, I'm gonna take a contention with the gold one specifically. Gold might not have financial value in like once you like overwhelm the supply in that contents, but there's some really useful tech things you can do with that. It's one of the best conductors that we physically know how to
Yes,
use.
but you're not going to do it if it's not economic. No one's going
Uh,
to the moon, to mine an asteroid if by bringing it back you're going to have so much that it's not worth the cost of
you
going there.
wouldn't bring it
That's
back.
just a
Don't
that's
look
just a
up. Just don't look
strange
up.
loop.
You wouldn't bring asteroids back. The whole point of asteroid mining is that you'd actually be using space industry for that. It's a whole different economics means something very different when you're doing space industry stuff.
Or let's
There's
say the
there's
people
another
that
variable.
discovered gold in Uganda that is unminable.
There's another variable, which in this case, which is the kind of environmental cost of the processing of rare earths is not legal in many places, and China is in a position to do it because they do it under a kind of a cloak of
Uh,
um,
uh, okay, hold on, real
yeah,
quick. Okay, when you refine minerals, there's like 4 or 5 different methods you can do. You can do thermal, you can do kinetic, you can do chemical, you can do electromagnetic in some cases. But like the short version of this is that the only difference between using lots of exotic chemistry, which results in all sorts of pollutions and everything else, and just melting the sucker down, just take some patch of dirt and just melt it, and then collect the gases or the liquids as it sloughs off. The only difference between this is just about 3x on energy. Like so,
right.
if you literally take any exotic chemical process that creates enormous amount of pollution, just say, now let's just do it the clean way. You just pay 3 times more on your energy, and if your energy is cheap, that's not a problem. If your energy is expensive or the energy itself is polluting, then that's the thing. But literally, just fields of solar panels or kelp, or there's all sorts of other manners. You could refine the entire world's supply of rare earths in a single facility. It's not that big a deal. The problem is that essentially when they try to pretend that this is a free market thing, when the only reason for us to mine rare earths in the beginning is often for military applications and increasingly electric vehicles. That's a newer thing. But it's we're seeing the split of what makes sense for free market and what makes sense for nationalization, and that's the actual debate that's happening right now. The fact that they're using it as foreign policy is kind of a distraction.
Okay, so I want to. China
Well,
has
can I ask Chris a question, by the way? Hey,
yeah,
Ken, Chris, this is Ken. I have a question. If you're correct that any patch of dirt works, how come the only lithium mine in the United States is in Nevada, in a very sparse county that only has 700 people? I mean, I guess your argument was, well, they're not going to mine it under the Las Vegas
Cheaper.
Strip, okay? But there's wide swaths of land in this country that don't have a lot of people in Texas and Wyoming. So if you could use any piece of dirt, why is the only lithium mine in this country
Groundwater
in Nevada?
contamination. You can cause a lot of offset pollution. So there's like a lot of mining that leaves a lot of artifacts that if you, for example, don't preserve the ground, that is keep it sufficiently cold, you'll have arsenic leak into the water supply and you'll kill everybody. So it
Well,
becomes very, very toxic, the byproducts of this kind of mining operation. That's why they were mostly almost all removed from America once everybody realized that not only were they toxic, but the byproducts were carcinogenic.
if you use chemical variations of mining. You can do thermal mining anywhere. The thing is that it will cost more, and if your primary thing is to make money, then they'll say, "Well, my product is 1/3 the cost of someone else's," and they say, "Shoot, I'm going to do that. What's the cost?" It's like, "Well, it's a huge amount of ecological damage." Well, as long as it's another country, that's not a problem for me. The thing is that the cost itself, if you embody the actual externalities in it, and you realize why we're mining these things. A lot of the things before we started doing electric vehicles were not done for market reasons. They're done for national security reasons, and that's where a lot of the splits happening. You could do the stuff anywhere. It's just cheaper to do it in certain places, and that's where everyone's like bickering is who wants to save the most cost.
Ipso facto, it's not a supply problem; it's a demand problem.
so China has responded to Turkey's announcement about this rare earth metals discovery today, and
And
did I
Turkey's NATO stuff.
just pin it to the top of the room? I did. So this is the Global Times, which is the state media from China, which is thoroughly approved by CCP members. And it says Turkey discovered. By the way, if you've never read Global Times before, you're in for a treat. And in multiple senses of the word treat, because it's, as usual with China, both in a weird ways admirable while simultaneously concerning. So, anyways, the article says Turkey discovered. I'm reading now from the article. Turkey discovered a rare earth reserve in the northwestern province of Eskişehir, which is estimated to contain about 700 million tons of rare earth reserves, sufficient to cover the global demand for 1,000 years. Russian media Sputnik reported on Monday, citing Turkish media. Funny how they don't go to the source and refer to their friends over there in Moscow, Sputnik. Although some questioned the accuracy of the data, many might think that the reported uncovering of a new large-scale rare earth reserve could have certain impact on China's position as a dominant player in the rare earths supply chain. However, it needs to be pointed out that the reality is that China currently is the only country in the world with a complete industrial chain for producing rare earths, a processing advantage that will not be simply diminished by uncovering of any amount of rare earth reserves, meaning they're willing to pollute their rivers in ways that no one else is. It is
It's
true.
worth defining. Reserves are defined by at a certain energy of extraction. Because if that amount changes, then the amount of reserves, the definition is way wider than the place that they're doing. It's by a certain concentration, a certain energy for extraction.
Freshwater don't
By way of example,
those.
Tyler, when we floated back in the 90s, Billiton, and it's one of the largest metals and mining companies in the world. And one of their assets was a business called Samancor, which was an aluminium smelter. And they site those smelters at the same junction points with the energy providers, which in that case was Eskom, and they plug the energy directly into what they call the pots in order
Yep.
to refine these metals and minerals, and the whole architecture of our society is plugged into those energy points. And so it's so much more than just reserves. It's all about the value chain and the supply chain. And the Chinese are right. It makes no difference that this has been found. You need to have the entire value chain. And part of it is that I don't think they want to poison their own people, but they're able to do things that don't accord with global norms.
One of them is getting government approvals to build, which is insane because the government just says build it, which is very different process from you have to go and get your private investors together and everything else. The speed at which China can build stuff is they don't
The
have to go
benefit
through the
of
same amount
a
of paperwork.
surveillance state that is run by authoritarians
Yep.
or
It says
an autocracy.
one thing to point out about the reverse specifically is it's not just about the energy with things. Going back to what Nicholas was describing with the aluminum, those aluminum smelters are actually somewhat unique in that they're one of the few industrial processes that they have to always be dumping energy to heating those pots. If there is ever a time where the cryolite just doesn't have energy supplied to it and it hardens because it cools off, you have to literally buy new refinery equipment. It's like you have to like write it off as a loss. It is one of the few industrial processes where once you start providing energy, you have to keep providing energy for the entire life of the plant. There's other processes that are more favorable for intermittent, but the reason why this relates to rare earths is that when you're working with aluminum, you're working with a single material you're trying to extract from it. When you're working with rare earths and trying to extract like little tiny fractions of all sorts of different things, it resembles actually a lot more like an oil refinery where you're trying to get different fractions, except extremely, extremely high temperatures, not just hydrocarbon range. There is a number of different processes that you can use for that. One thing that's really interesting is that the half of when they talk about rare earths, half of that in global supply actually includes cobalt. So if you actually exclude cobalt from a rare earth definition, it's only 50,000 tons a year, which is even it's like a half a boat, a big boat, but it's still a boat. Half of the most of those supplies, there's some in Australia, but the majority of cobalt supplies come from one region in the Congo,
which actually looks like conflict is spiking again on the border between the DRC and Rwanda. But the reason why that's relevant is that you're looking at like a single mine in the Congo could, if they got human rights upgrades and actually gain some security upgrades, you're looking at a single mine in the Congo being able to double, triple, quadruple global rare earth supplies, literally within a year or two. Thing about it is that they don't have the regional security to be able to assure that, and there's a lot of regional governments that benefit from keeping things unstable. So that's a lot of this is trying to like tiptoe around the fact that most of the rare earth supply chains were set up intentionally to be in areas where it was advantageous for great powers in the world, USA, China, Russia, etc., to keep the countries that they were mining from in a underdeveloped state. Less technology, less social cohesion, because that essentially is convenient from an imperial perspective of they're not going to protest when we're taking their minerals. Now, when we're looking into the future and say we need to have more solidarity, we need to have more, everyone working together factor, we're trying to kind of sidestep away from why the structure is what it is right now. But you still have remnants of that sticking over, and that's what you're seeing right here.
Okay,
I'm done. Sorry.
no worries.
Can I add to that? I'm actually curious to learn more because DRC just joined the East African community recently. So we do have regional trading blocks in Africa, although they're not fully functional as they should be. The East African community is consisting of Tanzania, where I'm from, Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda. South Sudan joined about 7 years ago when it broke away from the rest of Sudan. And then DRC just joined that block, I believe, about 2 months ago. Chris, what you mentioned about keeping countries like DRC unstable is very fascinating because, DRC has had what I would call a resource curse in economics, where they've been, had a lot of natural resources, as you mentioned, the cobalt, etc. Even going back to the days of Leopold, the Belgian colonialists, he kept. I think he had a big rubber plantation kind of monopoly from the region that he obviously helped to develop other countries around in Europe and the US. I'm actually curious if we, in the light of ESG and kind of investments where they're focusing much more on the social aspects, whether we'll see more socially responsible mining coming in to kind of dislodge that kind of imperialistic kind of approach to mining rare earth metals, particularly.
One, I'd like to just answer from an economic perspective, having financed a lot of the mineral mining industry through the capital markets. The issue that you have in most countries is that the risk takers who will get involved in these types of projects are usually on the on a certain end of the spectrum, and the need for massive influence to move infrastructure style hurdles usually requires ability to work with the nation state directly, and that there's some sort of trade-off, and that's why the Chinese have been so successful in bringing their state power to bear in Africa, and the economies have been able to produce these metals, but of course, minerals. But of course, these are not there under their ownership. They are under the ownership of those who provided the capital. So the imperial days are gone. Long live the imperial days! And this is part of the explicit strategy. So I'd be interested to know if anybody else has got any reflections, but I always found that it was extremely difficult to finance these types of projects, and that you were reliant on governments that were unstable and were subject oftentimes to the influence of invisible powers, shall we say.
It's not just that they're unstable, they change the rules about every 2 or 3 years. Like Congo specifically, you're looking at a thing where like the mineral tax is going to be at 60%. Now it's at 30%. Now it's going to be at 80%. Oh, and by the way, we just nationalized the other groups because we had essentially another group take over. Like when you're looking at project risk, financing a large capital expenditure with something that you're looking at a near total loss as a very realistic possibility while having the liability of something winds up in the news because some child slave labor was used on the side, because essentially when they're displacing essentially some border conflict, those sorts of the people that can tolerate that kind of risk and throw that kind of money around are not necessarily the sort of people that are necessarily ESG a focus friendly. There's a lot of projects to invest money in the world that are sure hits, that are very low risk, that everyone gets to pat their pat themselves in the back and go, look what a good thing we did, but don't fundamentally change the underlying economics. Those are the ones that essentially attract the people that want to say, let's do a happy thing. People that are tend to be attracted to these kind of projects are more, it's a lot more rough and tumble. But what's exciting about this and what's really fascinating is over the long term, just based upon the geography. Many of the cities that we have as capital cities in the world are established based upon whether or not they have access to a coastline, and whether or not they have access to an inland riverway, or whether or not there's a defensible bay that essentially ends up being useful for military naval ships, trade routes, etc., that essentially end up dictating this. What's interesting is that the Congo, being with the Congo River that stretches the entire inland of Africa, it's one of the very few river systems uh, that has significant parts that drain to the inland. But when you look at essentially the structure geography of it, if ever the political systems are able to get in alignment, the technology, etc., this is going to be some of the largest capital cities on the planet just from the sheer geography of things. I don't know if we'll see it in our lifetime. Maybe things can change very, very quickly, but the
Yeah.
resource curse could become one day essentially its greatest strength. It's just there's a lot of groups that have it and prevent that from happening. So it's a very strange area, and there's a lot of fascinating things happening there.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
Canadian company that does construction that recently had kind of a very exhaustive probe, and one of the things that was found was, hey, in their business dealings with other countries, it seemed that bribery was a standard of practice, and they were like, well, every country does it. Each one of these projects requires some sort of bribery because of the instability of those regions. So it was an interesting.
Those were the invisible forces I was alluding to, Aya.
Yeah, so I was going to add that yeah, the EAC, this regional bloc, could be very important because in the
Could be.
Tanzania side, we're building a standard gauge railway to Lake Tanganyika. If you know your geography very well for that region, Lake Tanganyika borders like five or so countries, including the DRC. It actually contains 80% of the world's fresh water. You can look that up. I'm not. You can Someone can fact check me. 18% of the world's fresh water is in Lake Tanganyika because it's very long and very deep. And we've been like the colonialists have avoided, I guess, or at least even previous governments have avoided connecting up Tanzanian ports like Dar es Salaam to Tanganyika for I don't know what exact reasons, but if they connect that, it can provide a route for extracting minerals to the Tanzanian coast under the EAC under one regional block. So that's the promise. It may not happen in our lifetime, but yes, also some of the future mega cities in terms of population growth, we're going to see them in the DRC. We're already seeing big cities, kind of Kinshasa is already very, very large, probably approaching Lagos size, 15 million or so. We're going to see probably more in DRC, but also, of course, the rest of East Africa. So that region is going to become very, very contentious. And of course, the water aspect is going to be very interesting as well because it borders 4 or 5 countries. And so, yeah, it's an area that I'm watching very carefully. Maybe one of these days on Tech News, I might dial in from there. That could be interesting because I've been to DRC once, but on the eastern side near Rwanda.
Okay.
Wait, one last thing is there's a very active African investor community here on Clubhouse that does all sorts of conversations, and the geography is fascinating to learn about what opportunities are being to explore in different areas. It's absolutely fascinating hearing people discuss different parts.
Alrighty, everybody. With that, I think we've come to the end. Unless somebody has a hot headline they want to share to close us out.
Boris Johnson didn't resign.
Not yet? Oh.
All right. Well, there's always tomorrow. So we'll meet you.
There's always hope.
But
Yeah.
he's struggling. A lot of his.
Okay,
That's
I've pinned Ben's room on top, so whoever is interested on let's push ourselves to live off grid, yeah, please click on the room and join him. Thank you.
Yeah. So we'll see you over there. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you manana.
Thanks, Tyler. Thanks, Cheryl.
Thank you.